Business Tonight, I'm Bruce Whitfield, and welcome to this episode from the Sandton Convention Centre, where I've been attending the Financial Planning Institute's annual conference, and they've had some really interesting presentations. One of those was all about plain language. When you, if you ever have, flipped over the contract on a bank account, a credit card statement, the bond documents on your house, or maybe even a cell phone contract, was the font big enough for you to read? And if you managed to read it, did you understand what was meant? Now, as part of a revolution in financial services, for now at least, there's a thing called Treat Customers Fairly. It originates in the United Kingdom, where for the last decade and a bit, they've been trying to get official documents simplified. An expert in this field is Candice Burt. She runs a business called Simplified, and that kind of tells you what she does. It is 9 o'clock at night, Candice. Yes. We need to do a little lullaby, I think. Can you give me a lullaby?
Right, yes, for my 2-year-old daughter before she goes to sleep.
Well, she shouldn't be awake at this time of night.
Oh, no, that is
mother.
true, yes.
She wants to see Mum on TV, it's fine.
So I would probably sit her down and say, scintillate, scintillate, global vivific, fain would I fathom thy nature specific, loftily poised in the air capacious, strongly resembling a gem carbonaceous.
Yeah, that will put her to sleep. What on earth are you talking about?
So that simplified would be twinkle, twinkle, little star.
Do it again.
Scintillate, scintillate, global vivific. That's twinkle, twinkle, little star.
Scintillate, scintillate, global vivific. Exactly.
Fain would I fathom thy nature specific.
You went to a posh school, clearly. But that's the point. I mean, it's a nice way of illustrating the way in which, because that sounded very important, and you sounded terribly clever.
Did I impress you?
I was so impressed.
Yes.
But I was impressed because I felt stupid.
Ah, yes. And that's exactly what happens when lawyers use legalese and jargon to put together their contracts. That's exactly what happens. They make people feel stupid when they read their contracts. You
look clever and you sound clever because I feel stupid.
Yes, but have I communicated with you?
I don't care. You're just terribly impressive and you're well educated, so therefore I shall respect you and believe every word you say. Or at least that's the way the legal fraternity particularly, and the financial services industry, would like it to be.
Yes, and yet we find that it's not. What we do find is that when people can't understand the documents that they're reading, they become paralyzed. They're unable to make decisions about the financial products or other legal contracts, and so they don't buy.
Or they sign blindly.
Or they sign blindly, and then when it comes time to claim, they have a problem, because now the document doesn't say what they thought it says, the promises that they thought were there are not there, the benefits they thought they were getting are not there. So it's a big problem.
Is it malicious? Is it deliberate by certain industries? Or is it simply that our law originates from Latin, goes through a Roman Dutch phase, and that's just the origins of it is? That's the way it is. People like you spend, how long did you spend at university? Too long.
Way too long.
Learning the stuff.
Yes.
And so therefore it's the way it works, just deal with it.
And yes, when I was at university, I had to learn Latin. It was one of the requirements. I do know that they have dropped it, but they haven't dropped the Latin in the legal contracts that we sign. So you have people signing documents where they declare that they understand certain legal phrases, such as non-numerati pecunia, for example, or various other...
You're being all impressive again.
I'm being all impressive again, and now you want to throw money at me. Do you?
No, else we'll throw a brick at you. What did you just say?
Yes. So, well, really what it is that when somebody takes out a loan, they need to understand the terms and conditions of the loan that they're signing. And what we found is in the past, with the use of Latin and Roman Dutch terms, nobody understood what it was about. And so they had a problem when they came to or when the banks or other credit lenders would come to recover those debts, that they were finding it difficult because people had signed their names to things that they never understood.
And in a court of law, however, the court of law is still structured against the person who signed the contract.
Yes.
Says, well, I didn't understand it.
Yes.
And it goes back to the old principle of ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Yes.
So there is the defense there.
Yes.
Is it in anybody's interests, who's doing the deal, not the consumer's interests, to change the language? Because the moment I see what you mean, I might not want to sign.
Yes. And I think this nowhere is it truer than in guarantees or suretyship contracts, where you guarantee the debt of somebody else. If you have that in plain language, and I tell you that if the person that you're guaranteeing doesn't pay, I'm coming straight after you. I don't even have to go to them first. That's going to create upheaval.
Really?
Yes. And that's what you sign. You sign that away when you sign your suretyship contract.
Okay, so then people put things in English. Okay, so
Yes.
let's dismiss Latin. Latin will go,
Because
and that's
Latin's
fine.
not one of our 11 official languages.
Absolutely right. But only 10% of us in South Africa speak English as a first language.
Yes.
So we're terribly focused
Yes.
on plain language, and for that we interpret plain English.
Yes.
So if we get things in plain English, if you and I understand it, the Setswana speaker is going to understand it too. Not.
Right.
So how do we, because
Yes.
that adds another layer of complexity
It
here.
does. It does. And this is one of the challenges. When the law first came in, while plain language advocates were very excited that the laws were coming in to say that contracts had to be in plain language, the downside was that little research had been done into our multilingual, multicultural society. So plain language in South Africa is not plain English.
Okay, so, but surely if you are now translating a legal document into, say, Setswana,
Yes.
if you've taken the trouble of taking it from legalese into English, surely that translation is easier
Yes.
than going directly from the
Yes.
convoluted
Yes.
to
Yes.
Setswana.
Yes.
But do you not lose something in translation, multiple translations down the way?
Well, what we do when we do translations into different languages is we do back translations. So we get two different companies to do the translation into the Setswana, and then we have it translated back into English by a different company, just to make sure that we are not having those
Okay,
gaps.
so there's a check and
Yes,
balance there.
yes.
But there are lots of companies. I mean, you go into any garage, any parking garage, there's a sign in English this long that says a bunch of stuff. I don't know if you've seen the Gautrain signs, which
Yes.
are basically indemnity signs.
Yes.
There are 1,000 words that if you get stuck in a tunnel, you have something to read, which is great. But you're not
Yes.
going to understand it.
Yes. And people really do want to read legal documents, don't they? The minute that you see a heading saying disclaimer, you're going to say, oh,
What does
that
disclaimer
must be
mean?
for me. Well, exactly.
What
And
does
this
it
is
mean?
what we're trying to say. It's where you might limit or exclude your responsibility.
So
you
instead of putting disclaimer on the top of a
Yes.
sign, what should you put?
So you could put where we limit or exclude our responsibility.
So we're not responsible for your stupidity.
That's it.
Okay.
Yes.
But these,
Or for ours, in
Or
many
for-
cases.
So I'll
We're
try-
not responsible for our own stupidity. Many of those signs are saying that. But because we don't read them, or even if we do read them, we don't understand them.
our
We don't
train
understand
driver
they're
may be
saying
drunk.
that. Yes.
Not our fault. You'd go on this train at your own risk.
And they have, in fact, recently changed that sign
Okay.
because they weren't allowed to do that under the Consumer Protection Act.
So has the Consumer Protection Act then amplified the need and the use of
Yeah.
simplification?
It has. Well, it's drawn attention to it. It's made people more aware of it. I'd say the Treating Customers Fairly campaign more so has done it. But what we do find is that the regulators don't have any teeth. They are not enforcing. They're cloaked with the authority, but they're not enforcing the plain language requirements. And I believe the reason is they don't understand what the plain language requirements are, what it means to be in plain language.
But recently in the cell phone industry, for example, Vodacom was the first, and it triggered the rest,
Yes.
to invoke the terms and conditions in their contracts. Now,
Yes.
have you ever bothered to read a cell phone contract?
Have you ever tried to read
I gave up.
the volume of documents that they give to you when you go to get...
The print is that big.
Yes. So it's in a size 2 font.
Have you actually measured it? It is actually like
I do.
Arial size
I
2.
believe it might be an Arial size 2. And once you've got your magnifying glass out,
Yeah.
and the reason they do that is because they believe it should all fit on one page. We don't want to give our consumers too many documents.
We care about the trees.
Because we care about the trees. So now what you have is the small print, because we're saving paper, but they've got to get their magnifying glass out to go and have a look at what it is. Then when they do get to that content, it's so impenetrable, the language is so impenetrable, you could never understand what your obligations are. And so now you're locked into a contract for 2 years, you don't understand that you are, and nobody really is coming to your...
And in that contract is a line that says, we can change the pricing at any point
Yes.
when it suits us.
Yes.
You can't do the same, but it's up to us. And,
Yes.
and terribly sorry if we have to, we'll apologise, but you will be stuck in the contract. And if you don't want to pay the extra whatever, we're going to sue you because you're in breach of the contract.
And so once again, the Consumer Commission is able to challenge unfair contract terms. But we're not finding that there is sufficient impetus in the Consumer Commission. I suppose that there's an overload of cases.
But you worked in the UK for a while,
Yes.
and they've taken this plain language thing very seriously.
Yes.
Are we taking it seriously enough in South Africa?
I think industry really is trying. I do think that companies are more and more trying to communicate with their consumers in a language that they can understand. A, because there are business benefits to it. They can sell more products if people understand what they're talking about, but also because it's the right thing to do. And I do think they are more and more going towards that.
Does
that
plain
route.
language make business sense? Because if I really know what I'm signing, am I not less likely to sign it?
Wouldn't you rather have a contract with somebody where the bargaining power between us is equal?
I'd never enter into any agreements, because then I'd know what I was dealing
Yes.
with. It's because you go blindly
Yes.
in good faith.
Yes.
And the contract's only there for when things go wrong.
And the thing is that the fact that the document's in plain language doesn't mean that those obligations are not still upon you. That the things you have to carry out under that contract are still there.
You could be accused by the purists
Yes.
of dumbing down the law. What's your response to that?
Right. I believe that plain language is in fact a sophisticated language.
It's hard to be simple, isn't it?
It's very hard. The process of simplifying is complex. So it's not really a dumbing down, and we're not saying that you need to take out all the legalisms or legalese that there is. As an example, I always include the phrase domicilium citandit executandi, which means at your house. And the reason that I include it is if I have a document that might be subject to a court case, the magistrate's going to be looking that the document's been served at that address. So the domicilium citandi is the address at which you've agreed to be served. And so I keep the Latin, but I put it in brackets afterwards and say, this is known in law as.
Okay.
So it satisfies the lawyers, but my consumer can still understand the document.
One of the classic things, and all of us should have one of these documents, it's called a last will and testament.
Yes.
There is a chunk in there of gobbledygook that people sign off on, which goes, I forego my last will and previous testaments and, oh man.
It's interesting to me that you're going like this. There's a tract in there that's this long that people don't understand. There's a clause in there, something along the lines of I, the undersigned. In fact, all lawyers will know this. They'll all know this off pat. I, the undersigned, do hereby revoke, cancel, and annul all and any wills, testamentary dispositions, and codicils heretofore made by me.
What's the difference between a will and a testamentary disposition?
Testamentary disposition is a will.
So you could say, I cancel all my previous wills.
Correct.
Why don't we
You're
say
a
that?
natural.
Okay. Somebody's coached me very well on this. Candice Burt is a lawyer, but she's a plain language lawyer, and she's going around places like Old Mutual and Discovery and others, saying to them, you see these documents, they need to be in plain language. And she's making headway in the South African corporate space. Next on her list has got to be the bond documents you sign when you buy your house. There's more Latin in that stuff to make it look like Greek. That's been Tonight with Bruce Whitfield. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. See you next time. Bye-bye.